this video we'll be tackling one of the coolest projects ever of making a Marvel diorama series. But here's the catch, they'll all be based off of figures that you'll have at home, so these little sets can complement those figures. And today we're starting off with one of my favourite films, Iron Man 1. We'll be sketching, building and lighting up this model, and then providing instructions to you guys so you can build this at home, all in the quest to make the perfect minifig display. If you've been following the channel in the last couple of months, you would know that we've been working on a few little mocks here and there. And considering that these have all been basically Star Wars sets, I think it's finally time to give you guys that Marvel series that I've been promising since the latest episode of the Statue of Liberty project. Now, if you've not been following that series, it's basically where I make a small little desk piece encapsulating a key moment from the Marvel films, using primarily minifigures that most Marvel collectors will have at home, so you guys can make these little diorama sets yourself and display your minifigures off in the best possible way. And yes, before you ask in the comment section, that does mean instructions are going to be available at the end of this video over at tommycbricks.com. And where better to start than the first MCU film, Iron Man. Yes, according to Google, Iron Man did come out before Incredible Hulk. I had to look it up for this video. Iron Man will always be one of my favourite films, considering it kicked off the MCU, and the fact that it's just a great film in general. And we're going to start with one of the most iconic scenes from that film, the Iron Man Mark 3 Suit up. This scene was done in all of the trailers, as well as being one of the most badass moments in the entire film. It's just something about the mechanical detail of everything that really makes this scene stand out among others, to the point where other franchises have even copied the way that this looks. And that's exactly what we plan to do today. Now, one of the main reasons I wanted to do this scene in particular is because it was notably missing from the new Iron Man Armory set, a set I've already voiced my heavy opinions on in this video right here, but considering that this film was based on the Iron Man 2 era, I understand why it necessarily wasn't put in this set. Even though we did get whiplash from the end, so they still could have included this kind of a thing, but maybe it's just above LEGO's budget. But forgetting about this set and focusing more on the Iron Man 1 side of things, I think it's time to do some sketching. Unlike the other sets that were going to be tailored more towards the Star Wars dioramas that already exist, these ones don't, so I have a bit more creative freedom. I think what I'm going to do with these Marvel ones is make it so you can expand with other scenes and connect them all together. I'll probably just use Technic holes or Technic pins to do this. That way each diorama or each scene has their own border that the scene itself can sit on top of. I also need to give myself a bit of room because I want to have the floor all opened up like it is in the scene. Another thing I really want to have on this model are those two arm canisters that drop from the ceiling. Now, obviously this model isn't going to have a ceiling, so I'm probably just going to have them come up from the floor, but I still think this will look fine in the grand scheme of things. Then I want one arm in the back to hold the helmet, because I really want the Tony minifigure to be unmasked in this scene, as if he's midway through getting all this armor put on his body. This led to me thinking what size I should make this model, and considering I do want these to be desk pieces, I'm going to go slightly bigger than the Star Wars ones I've been going, but not too much bigger, at just 16 by 16 studs. I think this will be enough to future-proof me in doing other scenes, but it's small enough to still be considered a desk piece, which at the end of the day is kind of the goal for these. I also obviously want to stick to a price with these ones, similar to my Star Wars models. I don't necessarily want these to be too expensive in case you guys at home want to build these yourself. So I'm going to try my best to keep these under £25, which means I've set up some limitations for myself and I can't just go crazy, but I still want to make the best model I can possibly make. And considering I want to base these on minifigures that people will already have, I'm not going to factor the minifigure into the price. Speaking of the minifigs, like I was saying earlier, I want these models to be primarily based off of the fact that you guys have these minifigures already. So not only am I going to throw out some mod suggestions for minifigures, but these should be minifigures that you guys already have at home that will go perfectly along with this set. And if you don't worry, I'm going to suggest a few minifigs here. Now, the first minifigure I'm going to suggest is relatively obvious. It's going to be the Mark 3. Considering this scene is directly inspired off of Iron Man 1, it's obvious that we'd use the Mark 3 considering that it's the first suit used in this kind of configuration. I know there's a suit up scene earlier in the film where he uses the Mark II, but the suit up scene is done in a slightly different configuration, and we've never really had a Mark II suit. Well, unless you count this one. But the reason I want to use the Mark III is that it's been put in a very accessible set, being the Ironmonger set. The detail in this figure is absolutely immaculate considering it's one of the newer grade Iron Man figures, and obviously it's just the most accurate suit to use. We don't have to cobble something together. The Mark III has always been one of my favorite suits, considering I feel like it's one of those Iron Man suits that's more grounded in realism than sci-fi, even if the idea of a billionaire making making a flying mech suit with advanced weapons sounds realistic to you at all. I think one of the main reasons I like this figure is because of the little silver accents, showing the mechanical detail underneath the plating of the armor, and unlike the nano suits that were very seamless and clean, this one just feels a bit more mechanical, and like I say, realistic. Another cool thing about the Mark III is it's actually come in 2 variants so far, being in both helmet types. Now say what you want about the new helmet, whether you want the old one or the new one on this model, you can pretty much do whatever. The only thing I will say is that obviously the newer Mark III comes in a relatively overpriced set, so it's completely understandable to me if you just want to use that regular Iron Man suit, and maybe if you want the newer helmet, just buy a new one off a Bricklink. Future Tommy here, just remember that none of the Iron Man parts are included in the part list, so if you want any Iron Man parts, you'll have to add those yourself. As for another minifigure I think you can use, it's on the more rarer side, but it's one people might have in their collection from a fair while ago. It's actually this Tony Stark figure, half suited up. Now weirdly enough, this figure only has one exclusive print, being the torso. I imagine it's going to work extremely well for this kind of scenario. But here's where we get into the modification territory. If we swap out this hairpiece and give Tony Stark the Mark III legs, I think this is going to be the perfect figure to put on this set, giving us the right amount of suit up look to the figure that we want. And I'll be using the figure that looks like this throughout the rest of this video. But just remember, you can pretty much use any of these figures. These are only recommendations on my part. Now, like with all these little diorama sets, I'm going to go the little extra mile and actually light some of this up, with lights provided to me from my favourite lighting company, Light My Bricks, also being the sponsor of today's video. Now with a model like this, I really don't think LEDs are necessary whatsoever, but what I am going to do is I am going to put some subtle lighting throughout this model, maybe just under the floor here, just to add that tiny bit of lighting. If you guys don't know who Light My Bricks are, I'll leave a link to them in the description, as well as to their YouTube channel, so you can see what type of LED kits they sell for LEGO sets, as well as take a look at all their components in case you have a custom set like this one that you want to light up. Just remember to tell them that I sent you in their comment section. This way the model is lit up in a way which I feel is a lot more subtle, but still effective. And it'll look great whether it's lit up at night or just on the desk in the day. But now that you've seen some subtle glimpses of it, I think it's finally time to show off this model. And here's the final model, and boy am I happy with it. This turned out to be a fantastic display piece, and the idea of taking that Mark III suit up and turning it into Lego bricks was clearly a good decision. The intricate robotic detail and greebling all over this model is fantastic, and really does capture that silhouette of the Mark III suit up, even if the arm canisters are coming up from the floor and not from the ceiling. It's like I was saying before, this is such an iconic scene from Iron Man 1 that I think a lot of people are going to appreciate this model. And the best thing is, even though I worked to a price, I still managed to tile off pretty much the entire floor, with certain elements of the floor kicked up, really adding that element of depth to this model that I haven't done with the Star Wars ones. And because I managed to work to that price, it means that this model is actually incredibly cheap to build, which makes it super accessible if you guys wanted to build this as well, which you can do by going to my website tommycbricks.com and downloading the instructions as well as the part list. That'll be in the link in the description if you guys wanted to check that out, and I'll also throw Light My Bricks in there as well if you guys wanted to check out the LEDs I used for this video. If you guys want to see more of what I've done in terms of little small dioramas, you can click the video on screen now and let me know in the comment section below what Marvel diorama in this style would you like to see next. See you over there.